Anyway, I want to move on here, folks, to my favorite governor. My favorite governor of all states, New Jersey. Governor Christie, who is doing what Republicans need to do. You want a blueprint, folks, for how to do things. You want a blueprint? People are yearning for a guy like Christie right now. And he didn't sat down, he's taking out the teachers union, he's cutting spending. He is doing what he said he was going to do. He's not raising taxes. Folks, if it can be done in New Jersey, it can be done anywhere. He sat down with Paul Gigot, Paul Gigot, of the Journal Editorial Report, which is one of those throwaway weekend shows on the Fox News channel. And I want to play a couple of clips here from Governor Christie. First question here from Paul Gigot is, you reduced government spending in the state of New Jersey for like the first time ever. Governor Christie, how did you do it? Roll the tape.
Well, we did it because we stuck by our principles. We said right in the beginning that we were going to reduce spending, and we've reduced spending 9% from last year's budget. We said we would spread the pain evenly. Every department in state government got a cut. Every one of them was reduced. We said that we would not raise taxes on the people of the state of New Jersey, and we vetoed the tax increase that the Democrats tried to put forward. So we stayed to our core principles. We stood firmly on them. We negotiated in areas where we had to negotiate, but very little, and 99.88% of the budget that I presented on March 16th was passed on June 28th.
What's your response to those people who say, you know what, part of that $10 billion deficit you closed, you kicked the can on a $3 billion pension contribution down the road. That's not a real long-term savings.
Well, what I would say to them is, I've already worked towards pension reform, which we passed a good amount of pension reform in March, but until we get all of it, I'm not going to throw good money after bad into this system. And I'm certainly not going to raise taxes in order to do it. So we have to bend the benefit curve and get pensions to be more realistic, and then I'm happy for the state to make their contribution.
All right, now folks, did you hear what he just said right there? Things I just said right there. Sticking to your principles. You don't compromise with Democrats. You don't give Democrats 2/3 of what you want. You go out, you tell these agencies of government, you're going to clean it up, we're going to reform, we're going to change, you're not going to get automatic increases, we're not just going to stand there and throw money at problems, and you realize government has a spending problem, not a, well, what they would call revenue, and I call taxes. They don't have a tax problem. And Governor Christie's completely right here. Now, the unions, of course, are going bananas. And one of the typical arguments of the Democrats is, and I hear this in Minnesota all the time, well, we're such a great state, and we're such a great place to live because we invest, as they put it, in education, and we have police and firemen and essential services, and that's why people come to Minnesota. That's not why people come to Minnesota, folks. They do not come to Minnesota to get social service. Well, I guess I can't say that. The dependency class probably does. Your average citizen probably doesn't. So Paul Gigot asks Governor Christie a question along those lines. What do you say to the people who say you're getting rid of all this police and firefighters and teachers, and the state's going to die and fall off in the Atlantic Ocean? Governor Christie again hits a grand slam home run. Roll tape.
They say you've got to cut firefighters, cut police, lay off teachers. What's
absolutely not true? Maybe they should get to the real world, where people, 55% of Americans during this recession have either lost their job or had their pay cut. If these folks would just take a pay freeze, we'd be able to avoid all those things that they talk about in there. So what I think we need to do is to have everybody share in the sacrifice. The private sector is sharing in this sacrifice. The public sector needs to share in the sacrifice also. And so this is just the normal scare tactics that they play. But you know what? The people in New Jersey are getting smart to this, and they realize they're the ones being asked to pick up the
How much did they spend on television on these ads and related ads to take your approval rating down?
Since March 16th, they've spent over $7 million.
Over $7 million. And that's teachers' dues money. That's union dues money, mandatory dues money.
Absolutely. In fact, the CWA, the State Workers Union, has asked for an additional 1.5 assessment on the dues just to run ads against me.
It's a great answer. Get into the real world. I mean, seriously, get into the real world. This is what happens. Ups and downs in the economy happen. Look at the state of Minnesota. Public unemployment is 1.8%. I mean, Governor Chris said, look, if you people just took a one-year pay freeze, we could solve this problem. Now, in the real world, 10, 15, 20% of those people would probably be laid off. And these teachers, they grab union dues, $7 million in union dues to run ads demanding your money. And we see it here with that piece of garbage Tom Dewar. who ought to be arrested for extortion. We see him all the time on TV demanding your money, fighting any reform, fighting any change, fighting accountability, fighting competition. I mean, if an oil company operated the way Education Minnesota did, they'd be broken up, they'd be dragged in front of Congress, they'd be humiliated publicly. But if it's a teachers union, oh well, it's just, and again, he gets into the teachers union. I got one more clip here from Governor Christie. They get into the teachers union. Paul Jagot says, conventional wisdom, which usually is wrong, by the way, says you can't take on the teachers union. Well, what do you think about that, Governor Christie? Watch this.
The other bit of conventional wisdom is you can't take on the teachers union. They're sacrosanct. You'll get accused of laying off teachers. You'll be accused of hurting kids. And they've used that, as we saw in that ad. They're trying to use that argument. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with the teachers unions, and is the public changing in its perception of how education works?
People love their teachers. I love my teachers. I'm a product of the public schools in New Jersey. And parents love their teachers, but they don't love the teachers union. And it's because the teachers union has been unwilling to be part of the shared sacrifice.
You asked the teachers, as part of this budget, one of your first offers, take a pay freeze, which was it going to be about 5-6%?
Yeah, it would have saved about $750 million.
And they refused.
Absolutely.
Did that help or hurt your argument that, you know what, we're going to have to make some cuts for education?
Well,
did they seem to be simply not cooperating?
Well, I think that's what people saw. I think people saw that they had an opportunity to avoid layoffs, to avoid program cuts, if they would just freeze their pay for a year. Now, contrast that with the fact that, as I said before, 55% of the people in America have either lost their job or had their pay cut.
I think Governor Christie's on to something right there. You don't fight the teachers, and you don't fight teachers as individuals. I respect teachers as individuals. I'd never do that job. All the gold at Fort Knox, I wouldn't be around other people's kids all day. But you make the fight with the union. You make Tom Dewar the bad guy. You go after him. You expose him. Do what he's doing. He doesn't represent all teachers. He thinks he does, but he doesn't. And $7 million, by the way, in union dues in New Jersey. By the way, that's taxpayer money. I mean, that money is being, goes to teachers in dues, and where the teachers get their salary from us. And then those dues end up in Democratic coffers. And speaking of which, President Obama just sent around a whole bunch of money to California and New York and Illinois, all to get Democrats reelected. And some of that money is going to end up in Democratic coffers and in their candidates. I mean, it's just despicable with this president. The guy's terrible. It's horrible. Governor Christie is giving a blueprint for how this is a blueprint. When we take the majorities, this is how we got it. When Tom Emmer becomes the governor, this is what he's got to do. And I think Pawlenty did this to a certain extent, but I don't think he really took on they all hated him anyway. You might as well have. I mean, they're going to hate you no matter what you do, unless you're in bed with them. So I don't see why our side doesn't do this. But you can't compromise with these people, folks. It isn't possible.